Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this is, alhamdulillah, this is a great chance for all of us to gather in masjid. So I would like to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity. At the same time, I would like to thank all brothers who work very hard to make this event successful. May Allah accept from them all. So this is about a brief comparison between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. So please feel free to ask at any time. This should be an interactive session. And if you are artificial intelligence specialist, please keep the questions for later. Ask me personally, because I'm not specialist. Yeah. So don't expect much from this. So I want to introduce you to my friend. He's Hisham or Hashimoto. And Hisham, he has very special talent. Whenever he saw a person, he can guess his nationality. So he said, this person, he said, this is Indonesian, this is Bangladeshi, this is Egyptian, this is Libyan. So I asked him, why you have this ability? Why you have this talent? And he said, this is because of my job. And when I asked him, what is your job? He said, maybe you can ask the people in Ibaraki masjid and they can guess. So what do you guess his job? This man who can know the nationality of people from their faces. What is the possibility job of him? Imam? You mean like have extra powers? But it's yeah. So maybe he work in foreign affairs. What is the other possibility? Translator. What else? Yeah. So maybe he is like, yeah. He work with tourists. What else? What else? He loves travel. What else? There is another option. Student. So he traveling a lot. So this man works in a passport office in the airport. So every time he meet with someone, he saw his face, and at the same time he see his passport and stamp it, so he know his nationality. And this made him learn by experience, by facing a lot of people. And at the same time, he has the information about their nationality. If he work in a restaurant in the airport, for example, he will meet with many people, but probably he will not get the answer about their nationality. And maybe he will be shy to ask the question. At the same time, if he work as a tourist guide, maybe, yeah. Yeah. So because of that, this person, he meets with the person and at the same time get the information about his nationality. So he will get information like this, like the face of a person and his nationality, Indian or Japanese. Yeah, because he worked for this for many years, he was exposed to many people. So he was exposed to big, if we will use the terms used in artificial intelligence or data science, he has a big data set. And this big data set is labeled. So he has the information and has the label. He has the face and has the nationality. He has the face and the nationality. So sometimes he cannot explain why. So if you ask him, why you think this brother is from Yemen? He will have no answer. Some cases he will tell you, why do you think this man is Japanese? He said, because of his hair, because of his eye shape, for example. Maybe for other brother, he think for other person because of his language. But in many cases, he cannot understand why. There are some clues and there are some cues that his brain could understand, but he himself cannot explain. So if we collect, for example, 10,000 or 100,000 people pictures with their nationality, theoretically we can produce AI model, AI machine that can tell us the nationality of the person from this picture alone. But how can that happen? Because faces of people is very difficult. There are many features. We have eye shape, we have nose shape, we have color of skin, we have ear, we have many things. Complexion, the color of skin, hair style. So it will be very difficult for me to explain this to you. So that's why I take an easy example. So we want to make a model to discriminate between these two categories of either bicycle or motorbike versus car. So whatever we get information, we want to say, is this bicycle? It belongs to the category of bicycle, or it belongs to category of bicycle, of motorcycle or car. Why I mixed motorcycle and car, I have no idea. That's how this came to me. So we have this set. We have this set. So, for example, first bicycle, it has 2 wheels and its mass is 15. So we will reduce, because there are many features for bicycle, but we want to reduce them to only 2 to make the explanation easy. So I took only the number of wheels and the weight. And you can see here we have one bicycle which have 4 wheels. There are a bicycle that have 4 wheels, and because this is a child bicycle, but its weight is small. We have car with 4 wheels, and also we have motorcycle with wheels. But when we come to the mass of these, we can see most of bicycles, they are lightweight. Most of car or motorcycle, they have high weight. So I want to build AI model, machine learning model, that can discriminate when I give this information and tell me if this is a car or motorcycle or a bicycle. So next. So this is the way we the neural network or AI work. We have these nodes. So this is the information we get. We have the information we get. This is the input, the mass of the vehicle. Yeah, no, not this one. Yeah, back, brother. Yeah. So we have the mass and we have the wheels. And we have the information here. So let's take, if we take them one by one, so if the mass is high, it can be a bicycle or motorcycle. But when we test, we find that when the mass was high, it probably was a car or motorcycle. But when the mass was low, it probably was a bicycle. So we find that. But when it comes to the number of wheels, either 4 or 2, it doesn't make a big difference, because we have cars with 4 wheels, we have bicycles with 4 wheels, and we have motorcycles with 2 wheels. So it's not very important. So what happened when this model is built, we find the relation between this input and the output, the class, and this will identify the weights. This connection between this was called a neuron, and this one is edge, node and edge, and this is the output. We have something like this. So here in this one, it's the mass, which is very important. But the number of wheels was not very helpful. And this will happen, we know this, by training the model again and again and again and again, until we can find the model that we give input and it give us the output. This is very basic idea of a neural network or machine learning. But usually this is not the case, because it's much more complicated. Usually we have a model of this size. So the input, we will have many inputs, and the output also, and we will have a lot of nodes here. And every time we test the model, these weights, these edges, we will change depending on the output. And we will finally get a model that we can give input, we can give features, and it will give us output. This has a lot of mathematical background. I'm not familiar with that because my background is not mathematics, but it worked by, research. This is a very active research, and it can, produce very, very good results. Next one. Okay. So what are the application of this? So this used in Google Translate, and also in medical imaging diagnosis. So now we have machine learning models, which we give image, MRI image or CT scan, and it can give us diagnosis. And in some cases, this is better than doctors, human doctors. Also in self-driving cars. Google Maps will tell us which way we use, depending on a lot of information, including the number of cars in that way. And so it all use AI. It all use all this neural network model. Amazon also, if you buy something, Amazon will give you other ideas about, possible things that you will be happy to buy. It's all built on this model. And this is ChatGPT. Have you heard about ChatGPT? ChatGPT is causing a lot of noise recently, maybe in the last 1 month. It's amazing. So I asked ChatGPT about our friend Hashimoto. Do you remember Hashimoto, who knows all the nationality of people? So I give this question to ChatGPT, and it said the possibility is 1 immigration officer, customs officer, interpreter, travel agent, language teacher, international business professional. It gives the same answers we have here, with the human brain, human thinking, with a background of idea, and we were a lot of people. We were like 10 people, and it gave us same thing. All this built on a neural network. So to build a neural network or artificial, we need labeled data set, like what I said about a person who has, we know how his face and know his nationality. And also we need algorithm. This idea of building a neural network, give weights to the node, to the edges and nodes. And also we need the machine, a computer. Now, this is getting very advanced because recently there is a lot of progress. There is a lot of advancement in those machines and in algorithms. And also data now is accumulating. That's why we can see Google Translate can easily translate from Arabic to Japanese, from English to Arabic. And every year we get better results because the training set, the model is getting trained more. Whenever we interact with it, it got more training. So here comes the question. Where this idea of neural network come from? So it comes from the brain. So those people who created this neural network, they didn't bring it from nowhere. They just imitated the brain. The same thing is happening in our brain. Next, brother. So in the brain, we have neurons. That's why they call these neurons. And in every one of us, we have billions of neurons, a lot of neurons in our brain. And these neurons are connected to each other with axons. So this is then the neuron with the nervous cell in our brain. And this is the axon, which is a connection between this neuron to another neuron. It's very similar to that one. If you remember that one, there we have connection between the neurons, the circles, and there is edges. But the difference that the mechanism of this is more flexible because those axons are not fixed. Those axons are changing. This is called neuron plasticity. So when we learn anything new, our brain start to building these axons, these connections between the neurons to make us automate that function. Go next to brother. So when we have a child, maybe those of us who had children, they know that when child was born, he cannot recognize faces. And this is sometimes very depressing for the mother. So after she gave birth to the child doesn't recognize her face. He cannot see, he doesn't look to her eyes. So she feels sometimes depressed because of that. But after 6 weeks, the child collects information and his brain build the network, build these axons between the neurons and start to see that there is something familiar. There is a face here. There are 2 black things or blue or whatever eyes. Then he start to recognize his mother. And then he start to know, oh, this is mother. So he looked to her face. And then he starts smiling. And this happens by time. So you see, after 6 weeks, at the age of 6 weeks, the child start to pay attention to faces. And then he begins to act bored. So he show some emotions. And then at start also, if you notice, the child is moving his hands and legs without any control. It's just moving like this. Because his brain didn't learn how to control these muscles and these arms. But after some time, the child start building those axons start to learn these things that he can control. And so if you have a child, you notice that at start, he will try a lot just to catch something. So he move his hand like this, and then maybe if he want to catch the microphone, he will do this or this, then finally he will catch it. And after that, it becomes very easy. So now it's very easy for us because we don't think about it. Our brain built axons between these cells, neuron cells. So they're built axons, and those axons help automate this function. And this happens by training, by doing this again and again and again. So when the child moving his hand, he got this ability. If he stopped moving his hand, probably he will not get this. For example, when a child born with a problem with eyesight, for example, he has maybe corneal opacity, he cannot see. If it's not treated in the first time of his life, he will never see. Even if this was treated like after 4 years or 5 years, and he has everything is functioning, but his brain was not developed to do this function. So it's brain like when you buy a computer without operation system. It's hardware only. And then it start building all this by training and moving and seeing things, hearing, and start to connect things together. So the child at start, he cannot know this is food, but after some time, he will build a connection between the sight of food and the taste. So maybe by seeing food, he understands this will be tasty. And after some time, he will connect the sound with his mother. So when he hear the sound of his mother, he feel happy and feel calm. And this also happens at old age. In our age, for example, when we learn driving a car. So maybe all of you, maybe you know how to drive a bicycle. So at start, it was very difficult to manage balance. So you need to move this way, this way. So at start, your brain is doing this with your consciousness. But after you train this, you may be talking at the phone and driving a bicycle without caring. And driving a car. So maybe some of you, maybe they start a car from here in Osaka, going, for example, let's say to Kyoto or to Nara, and he find himself in Nara, and he didn't remember what happened. How did I pass through all this road, and there was a red light, and there was many things on the way. But how happened? I didn't care much about this because your brain is doing this function. This through this learning process, this neuronal plasticity, and also playing games. If you learn new sports, fine skills like calligraphy, keyboard typing. So now I think most of us, because we use the keyboard a lot, we don't need to look at the keyboard when we type the letters. But at start, we need to look for everyone, and we need to know where is the position of this key and that key. And that all happened because our brain built a network between these neurons, which have function, related to the motor function, our hand, our fingers movement, at the same time, our eye function, our hearing, all these were connected. And this all depends on our training, our experience, and our exposure. Using computer mouse also, when Windows started in 1992 or 1991, they had a software included with Windows that train people how to use mouse. So they show animation that you go here and click, and you have to move the mouse and click, and double click also. Because at that time, people don't know what is this. But now, our kids are more like, how to say, more better than us in using mouse and using phone, because they learned earlier. Yeah. Okay. So what I want you to take home from this message, okay, so the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most important inspiration for the new technology. I believe all the technology we have, or maybe 90% of the technology we have now, is built on the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This neural network, which is now taking a lot of there is a lot of, not rumors, I mean propaganda, and there is a lot of media is talking always about AI, artificial intelligence. This is imitation of human brain. So it's nothing new. When we see about camera, it's also imitation of a human eye. The same thing, we have lens, we have that, I mean, chip with sensitive to the light, similar to the retina. It's all, I mean, built on Allah's creation, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, so the most of technologies we have now are simple imitation of Allah's creation. Also, AI is imitation of human brain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Dhariyat, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us clear message. Look at yourself. And when you look to yourself, we can see many signs that tell you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator. On earth, there are signs for those with sure faith, and in yourselves too. Do you not see? Yeah, that's all from me. Jazakumullah khairan. Yeah, so if anyone have easy question, please. Or comment or.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Brother Attayeb, Jazakumullah khairan. Really great discussion. Just I want to make some comment on your discussion, because I'm a specialist in neurology, So in human brain, there are for the functioning of the brain, there are two factors. One you mentioned, the environmental. So when the kids see the environment, they create the image inside their brain. Okay, this is one. And another one, there is anatomical. So with the aging, the anatomy is getting changed. For example, the neuron, the early developed neuron, when they are getting mature, there is myelination, the increasing the myelination, and their memory is also getting improved. At the same time, there are some neurotransmitters. Okay, so every neuron and the synapses that you mentioned, the axon and the dendrite connection, or axon connection, dendrite connection. So every neural junction, they secrete some neurotransmitters. And these neurotransmitters, actually, it is the main core of the message. Okay. So is there any relations? For example, you mentioned that this synapse in the human brain and the artificial intelligence, there is some building blocks. But do they secrete some neurotransmitter, like something like that, or is any relation with the environment and anatomy, which has the very good correlation of the human brain? Is there something like that with the artificial intelligence?
I think artificial intelligence is much similar. So there are many, of course, there are many types of artificial intelligence, and also there are many types of neural networks. But the simple one that we have, can you, brother, go to that one with the nodes? That one with this one. Yeah, this one. Yeah. So for this is I think we can say this is the simplest deep learning network. For each of these nodes, this called the neuron. So they use the same term that used in human brain. And each one of these have activation function. So the activation function of each neuron of these will be different from the other. So it's like it has different threshold. One of them has high threshold, some of them has low threshold. So I don't know if we can say that imitates neurotransmitter or not, I don't know. But eventually, the connection between this neuron and the next one, because they are all connected. If you notice, this neuron is connected to all other neurons, and this neuron is connected to all other neurons. So this connection has a weight. And this weight, if this weight is high or low, depends on the effect of this neuron on the next one. So maybe this one would have high weight, this one have low, this one maybe zero. So it means this neuron will have no effect on the next neuron. The other thing that some of these neurons, they have, let's say, activation function of zero. So whatever happens, they will not emit anything outside. And they call these dead neurons. So it means when the information comes from here and reach here, it dies here. It will not continue. And all these values, activation function, threshold, weight, depends on the output, in the final output, because the training of this model, it happens thousands of times. So we at start, we give equal weights, we give equal activation function for these neurons, and then we go until the end of this and we check the output. So if the output is wrong, of course at start it will be wrong. So the algorithm will go back and modify these weights in a complicated way. I don't know how, but this will change. And then we do this again and again and again. So if this change is leading to better performance, it will continue toward that direction. If it was to lower accuracy, like less performance, so it will go to the other direction. And after doing this maybe thousands of times, we can build a model. So for example, ChatGPT, which I told you about, it said it cost, training of that one cost $4 million, because they need to maybe to have a very huge computer, and also they need a lot of data, and they maybe spent a lot of years doing this training. So sometimes you need 1 month or 2 months, machine is working, very high specs machine, doing this until we can build a model that can give us like useful information. So what I believe, it's simpler than human brain. But how can we imitate it? Because as you said, the neurotransmitters, so we have multiple kinds of neurons. We have histaminergic neurons, we have dopaminergic neurons, and each one have different function. So I think that's the other, how to say, dimension that the brain has, but the neural network doesn't have, I think. But we should ask someone who is computer scientist or mathematician about this. Any other question?
Assalamu alaikum, brother. So how do we calculate the accuracy of this neural network? How do we know if the model is going to the right direction? Yeah.
Because we know, because we have labeled set. So when we train this model, so for example, that person who is Hashimoto, my friend, he see the person face. Maybe at start he guesses that this person is, let's say, Chinese, and then he see his passport, and then he confirm if he's Chinese or not. So when we train this model, we also have labeled set. So we have the input and also we have the output, and by knowing the correct answer, we can know if this is right or wrong. And that is done by calculating accuracy. It's like a percentage, how many value was right and how many is wrong. Let's, for example, if my friend, we bring him 100 faces, if he can guess 90 correct and 10 wrong, we can see that this accuracy is 90%. So if he another time he give after another 5 years, for example, we find that he become 95% more accurate. So that's how we know, because we originally know the answer when we build the model. It's not built on unknown data set.
Brother. The question is in my mind that when you input your data, so you know the output?
Yes, you know the output.
You know before the output?
Yes. This is for training. To create the model, you need to train at start. So if you don't know the output, then the model will not be trained.
So if your friend is see some European countries persons, that they have the same facials, yes. So how can he distinguish between their nationalities?
So what happens in my friend brain, he doesn't memorize the face of the person, but he memorizes other things that he cannot even explain, like maybe the size of the eye, the shape of eyebrow. So there are other clues which are common among, let's say, Libyans. So Libyan people, they have special shaped noses. His brain will understand this. And this will happen because he exposed to many of them. When he exposed to 1,000 is better than 500. When he exposed to 2,000 is better than 1,000. So it's not only he memorized the face, but he will memorize other things that, I mean, not very clear. Even if you ask him why you decide this person is Libyan, he will not answer. He will tell you, I don't know. I have this feeling. And then we have this in our life. For example, many of us, after we get old, we meet with someone on street and you say, I don't feel comfortable with this person. I think he's a thief. But if you ask him why you thought that, he will tell you, I don't know. Your brain knows. Your brain noticed something, but it's out of your conscious. And you understand that this person probably is a thief. So you have to be careful from him. Yeah, so it's like, you know, when we teach a child, so when a child start to the mother to show the child the picture book. So you tell him this is a horse, this is a cow. So after some time, he will see another horse, another cow. Then with whatever cow or horse picture you show him, he will say this is cow and this is horse. He never saw this same picture before, but he know how the cow looks like and how a horse looks like. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I saw this illustration, so there's a concept in management. They call it decision tree. So what they do, they in the input layer, they give some possible outcome, and with this possible outcome, they attribute the probabilities of that happening, and then they calculate the effective values of every outcome, and ultimately this gives the best possible outcome from those decisions. Is this somehow related? I mean, can we make any kind of?
This one is much more complicated than decision tree. So you can say this is much highly complicated decision tree. I mean, this is oversimplification, because in decision tree, maybe we have one node and we have only one or two edges, not too much. But this one, we have connection between all nodes and all nodes, all to all. So even when you look to the decision tree, you can interpret the node in the middle. So you can interpret what does this mean. You know what does this mean in decision tree. So for example, if you have age here, so if their age is high, then they go to next one, which may be weight. And then we go to something else, which let's say income. And we know that if the person, he has high weight, maybe he has high income. And if he has low weight, maybe his income is low, something like that. This is what happened in decision tree. But in neural network, we don't know what is happening here. No one knows what is happening inside, because because of this very complex structure, and these weights are connecting every node to all other nodes. When we come to understand what is the, for example, the impact of this input in this node, is very difficult to know it. It's almost impossible. So that's why they call this a black box. It's like you have a black box, something come from here, something come from the other direction. What happened inside, we don't know. Yeah, it's called hidden layers.
I forgot. First, I have comment about this structure, as Brother Tayyib said, is the output is known, and this is called supervised. But there's other different advanced, whereas the output is unknown to the model. Okay, my question is, do you think that neural network will replace human brain, and when? This is easy.
Yeah. So what I see now, it's very frightening. After maybe you saw ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT the same question we have here, and it gave the answer. And this answer is built on logic. So I didn't give any hint that this person is working in an airport or anything. And what we see now, that the progress of this is going very fast. So before it's like we have a curve going this, so we start to see Google Translate, and we can see some other like very useful tools. And now we have self-driving car, we have ChatGPT. So at start maybe it was going this, and now it's going this way. So I don't know what is going to happen in 2 or 3 years. It's very difficult to predict. And the thing that we should worry about is our jobs. We will have jobs after 5 years or 6 years. I don't know. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you.
Thank you from Brother Attayeb. That's such a nice presentation for AI. Okay, we'll move to the next presentation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. First, we express our gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the most powerful, the most gracious, and salawat and salam also to our Prophet Rasulullah Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. For brother and sister who doesn't know me, let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Afif Hamzens. You can call me Afif. I'm currently a student in Osaka University. Basically, my major is not Islamic studies or Indonesian language. No, I'm an engineering student. So maybe some of you will ask why this engineering student give this kind of presentation. My only qualification is I'm Indonesian and I'm a Muslim. That's all. But that's also give me the chance to express what is my experience as a Muslim in Indonesia. First, I want to ask everyone in here, does anyone know what mosque is this? I don't want to ask my Indonesian friend. Basically, they know. Anyone know? Brother Hani? It's Indonesian mosque. Yes, it's in Indonesian, of course. Anyone who have been in Indonesia know about this mosque? Okay, I suggest no one. This mosque called Istiqlal Mosque. This is placed very near. It's different from the Osaka Istiqlal Mosque. I know you're more familiar with that one. This mosque is, if I can say, the biggest mosque in Southeast Asia right now. And the interesting part of this mosque, just beside this mosque is a cathedral. So in the same complex, you have the biggest mosque and you have one of the most beautiful church. And just near that is the office of the President of Indonesia in Jakarta. So with that information only, you can imagine that Indonesia, people always know Indonesia as the nation with a lot of Muslim population. But the fact we are not Muslim country, it's kind of strange. Like usually if you see other country in Middle East, in other part of Asia, they use the Islamic law and state they are Islamic country. We are the country which have the most populous Muslim, but we don't use Muslim law. We have a different, we are democratic. We call ourselves democratic. So how Islam can enter and survive in this country who also not only have one language, but 100 more language. I don't say accent, brother and sister, language. For example, if I use my own personal local language, maybe Brother Satria don't understand me. But if Brother Satria use his local language, I also don't understand. That's how different we are. And it's just me and Brother Satria and also other Indonesian brothers and sisters. So we can say that Islam is one of the main things that unite us. But how Islam unite these diverse people? That's what I want to talk about, part of it. Before I want to speak about Islam in Indonesia, let's talk about how Islam came to Indonesia. There are a lot of theory, but I will show you three theory, three most renowned theory. The first one is from Arabia, in the 7th century or in the first Hijriah century. In the time of Khalifah Utsman ibn Affan, there is an expedition sent in the sea to go to the China, at that time Tang dynasty. If you see from Arabia, there's very, very far from Indonesia. So why Islam can arrive that? If you want to reach China from Arab through sea, you cannot go without going near Indonesia. That is the reason of the most famous passage in the world called Malacca Passage. This Malacca Passage is the passage that every traders in the past century always going through. This is like the biggest market in the world, and it's placed just near Indonesia. So this is proposed, this theory proposed by Hamka. Hamka is one of the best imam in Indonesia. He is the first leader of Indonesian Ulama Council. And this theory is also proposed by Professor Anthony H. Jones. He is an expert, a professor of Islam in Southeast Asia. What is the proof of this theory? I need to see my cheat sheet. There is a report from Tang Dynasty, China, around 900 AD, that Middle East merchant in Sriwijaya Kingdom. Sriwijaya Kingdom is a Buddhist kingdom in Sumatra. They found a Middle East merchant, Arabian merchant, Yemen merchant, already residing in Sumatra in 900 AD. And also there is a tomb, a gravestone of a woman, a Muslimah named Fatimah binti Maimun, with the date of her death is 1082 AD. If she already died and buried in Indonesia in 1082 AD, it means that she already lived in Indonesia around 11th century. So this is the proof of theory of Arabic people or Yemen people spread Islam in Indonesia. The second theory is Islam is spread to Indonesia by the merchant from Gujarat, West India, around 10th to 13th century. The one who proposed this is mostly Western scholars. Among these Western scholars, mostly Netherlands scholars, because Indonesia has been under occupation of Netherlands for quite a long time. And one of the most famous scholar is Snok Hurgronje. I hope I pronounce it right. I don't know Netherlands language. Hurgronje. One interesting thing about Hurgronje, he became a Muslim. But the reason he became a Muslim is to take down Islam in Indonesia, especially Aceh. He is actually first a civil servant in colonial government in Indonesia. The last part of Indonesia that still have independence from colonial Netherlands is Aceh, the northern part of Sumatra. It gives quite a huge problem for colonial Netherlands. How we can conquer Aceh? All of other region in Indonesia already are under our administration, only Aceh. So they sent Hurgronje to see what is the weakness of Aceh people. So he see it, he come to Aceh, he see how Aceh people live, and he see the strong point of Aceh is their religion, Islam. Aceh is actually the place where the first Islamic kingdom in Indonesia is built, called Samudra Pasai. So the root of Muslim in Aceh is very strong. The one who unite Aceh people to fight against Netherlands is Islam. So he changed his focus. I don't want to study Aceh people. I want to study Islam now. Why Islam can be a strength of Aceh people. So he go to Mecca. Hurgronje come to Mecca, learn about Islam. He remember the Al-Quran, become a Muslim, only to come back to Indonesia, make a report to Netherlands. If you want to destroy Aceh, destroy their ulama, destroy their mosque. And that's, brother, why Aceh fall down in 1901. And at that time, all Indonesia under Netherlands control. Because they know to make Indonesia under our control is to destroy the religion. This is how strong the roots of Islam in Indonesia affect the activity of Indonesian people. The proof of this theory is that a lot of tombstone of Islamic king in Indonesia have the style of Gujarati style. This one is the tombstone of King Malik al-Saleh. He is the first Muslim king in Indonesia, and also came from the first sultanate in Indonesia, I called before Samudra Pasai. So the year of the tombstone is around 1,200 year. So he believed if he already died in 1,200, mean that Islam already settled, he already become a king at that time. So at least in 11th to 13th century, Islam already have a strong root in Indonesia. The third theory is that Islam come from Persian merchant or Iran merchant. This is proposed by Professor Hussein Jayadiningrat. He is a student of Hurgronje. He is a student of Hurgronje. But he is he's Indonesian, and because he came from a wealthy family, he has a chance to get a better education at that time. He interested in Islamic heritage, so he know that at that time the best Islamic heritage professor is Hurgronje. So he go to Hurgronje, he studied with him, and then go to Leiden University to study. And then in 1950, he became professor of Islamic heritage in University of Indonesia. The proof of this theory is that there is a trace of Persian culture, or if I can say Shia culture in Sumatra. There is a festival in West Sumatra we call Tabui. What is this festival? This festival, they like celebrating in 10 Muharram, the Battle of Karbala. If someone who doesn't know, Battle of Karbala is the battle where Hussein ibn Ali bin Abi Thalib died against the Umayyah Caliphate. So there is a celebration which indicates a link to Shia culture in Indonesia. But some people argue that in the end, Indonesia is not a Shia country, mostly Sunni. So the influence of Persian is not really that strong. So there's a lot of debates on how Islam came to Indonesia. Another one that I'm not mentioning here is the influence of China. So in 1400s, there is an admiral of Tang dynasty, Ming dynasty, called Zheng He. Zheng He already made a report in 1400 that there are 100 Chinese, Muslim Chinese, live in Indonesia. This time not only Sumatra, but also already in Java Island. So I want to ask all of you, among three theory, which do you think is the most, the best one, the right one? Which one do you think?
Not about the right one, but I think it's very important because when we talk about India, the Islam came in two different ways. One from this side, the Kerala side. Kerala is in the southern part of India, very close to this. Not Gujarat west to Gujarat is here. This is the western part, and it was here. This side is Kerala, okay? And also the merchants, through the merchants, they came here also. Okay. Another theory in India also said that when the Arabs, they conquered the Sindh area, Sindh is now in Pakistan, and many came from there to Gujarat, and from here it moved. But the very first mosque was built in Kerala. So maybe there is connection from here also. So it's very hard to decide which one is the first.
Every professor of Islamic heritage said the same thing, Brother Moin. Until now, if you go to the history book of Indonesia, no one claim is the right one. We only gather all the possible theory, but we believe that it's difficult. And I don't think it's, as Brother Moin said, it's not the matter of which one is the right. Maybe each theory can provide something that actually true. So that's the thing that we need to learn from many kind of theory to find out which is possible at that time.
Do you think that link it to the language in Indonesia was not written language? You don't have historians at that time?
Actually, I want to also explain it later, but it's okay. Do you know that in Indonesia, Monday is Senin as Naini. Tuesday is Selasa. Wednesday is Rabu, Arba'a. Thursday is Kamis, Khamsah. Jumat is Jumat. Saturday is Sabtu. And Sunday, we call it Minggu, but we can also call it Ahad. I think you can get an idea from here. It's related from Arabic. So Malay language, basically Indonesian language, root from Malay language. The Malay language can be divided in history from Old Malay to New Malay. Old Malay is actually came from India. The root is actually come from India. But then when Islam came to the Malacca Passage, they want to, the language is a vehicle of trades. And when do you see there's a lot of Middle Eastern trades, merchant came, they cannot use Old Malay anymore. They want to talk with them so they can sell. So they start to learn the Arabic language. And at that time, they see that the Arabic language is easy to adopt to the Malay language. And that's why we call it Pejon language, Pejon script. Pejon script is actually a Malay language, but you write it in Arabic. So for example, my name is Afif, is actually have Arabic roots. Which one? Andika, maybe. Andika is not from Arabic, but we can write it with Arabic language. Basically, it's Pejon language. So you can write it in Arabic. So that is one of the example of how culture language affect the Indonesian. And that's also some part that I want to explain on how Islam not just enter, but stay and become the majority of religion in Indonesia. So the journey of Islam in Indonesia is actually quite long. Let's take that Islam in Indonesia did enter between 7th and 13th century. After that, in the 14th century, to 16th century is not the time of introduction anymore. It's the time of spreading. And one of the most famous story about spreading Islam in Indonesia, especially in Java Island, is the period of Wali Songo. Wali Songo is, if we translate it to English, Songo means 9. And Wali, it's kind of difficult to translate it to English, so I choose trusted guardians. I don't know, for maybe the Japanese people in here can have a better translation of Wali. Brother Satria, what do you think? Okay, because I'm not a Japanese, I'm not really understand. So Brother Wahid said that they use these words in India. So, I'm sorry. Wali is Arabic. Wali is Arabic. Songo is India. So you see there is already connection in there. But what thing that you need to understand, not all language in here come from Arabic. Some is still come from India, which mean there is still some influence of Hindu and Buddha kingdom that already been in Indonesia before Islam came. So that's how basically Wali Songo work to spread Islam in Indonesia. They don't just, this is Islam, accept it. No. They already see that Indonesia already has religion at that time. At that time, the kingdom in Indonesia is basically Hindu kingdom or Buddha kingdom. But that's only the royalty. The people, mostly not really Hindu or Buddha. Most of them still believe in natural gods, like to the trees, to the ancestor, and animism. So to make Islam more acceptable to Indonesia, they try to mix it. They try to adapt some of the culture of Indonesia and use it as the vehicle of dakwah. For example, in here, this is actually a culture that already exists in Indonesia at that time. We call it wayang. It's like a puppet, a puppet you control with hand. They usually use as part of the praying and also telling legend in the past. But when Wali Songo came, they used the wayang to tell the story of Prophet Muhammad SAW. They use wayang to tell about the Islam rules, about the Islam da'wah. So they don't completely erase that. They don't completely erase the culture. They know to make it closer to people's heart, you need to use something that already been used for so long, that been so close to people. And what else is the closest one to people other than its culture and arts? That's how they try to make Islam more acceptable. And around that time, a lot of people convert to Islam. One interesting thing, Islam never introduced to Indonesia through war. There is never a war or violence that been made to introduce Islam to Indonesia. That's the interesting thing. When Hindu and Buddha come, they still use war. When later in the Western, when the Portuguese or Netherlands came to introduce Christian, they still use war. But Islam never used war. The only war happened during the Islam Sultanate is only conquering between each neighborhood. But to introduce Islam, they never use war. When they conquer a land, they don't force people to accept Islam, but they give by example. This is me, your ruler, a Muslim. This is how I do. I'm not going to force you, but you can see me. This is how Islam works. And do you see, at that time, when Hindu and Buddha become the religion in Indonesia, mostly in Hindu, there is the kasta system. There is a Brahmana, there is a Kshatriya, there is a Vaishya. people cannot get out from that class, from that classification. So when Islam came, they see that even if you are the smartest people in the world or the poorest people in the world, you all same in the eye of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's interest people. They may not interest the royalty that easily because that means they need to decrease their degree. But the number of royalty compared to the common people, there's more common people. And that attract more common people, which make it spread very fast in Indonesia. And then in 17th and 18th century, that's when the Western power came. Around the 17th and actually around 1500 AD is they call it the golden age of exploration in Western. There is a competition between many Western power like Portuguese, Spain, English, to not only find a place of spices, of any other thing, but also to spread the religion. By the time of 17th and 18th century, Islamic consolidation in Indonesia already exists through arts and culture. Basically, from 5 major islands in Indonesia, 4 of them already accepted Islam in majority. So you can see, because most merchants who bring Islam came in this area, it is understandable that the first island, the first part of Indonesia who accept Islam is Sumatra, because that is the nearest one. And then came to Java, and then to Borneo, Sulawesi, and the last one in Papua. The Western power, as I said before, they don't just come to become a merchant. They don't just come to trade. They want to conquer. They want to use it at their source of spices, source of gold, and anything. So they not just come bringing their priests. They also come bringing their soldier. So at that time, the view of Indonesian people, this people is different from before. People before just want to trade with us. We just have something, we give them something, they give us something. But this one, they want to monopolize. This is different. And Islam become a very major force for people to fight this colonial power. The one who most fighter of this colonial power is actually a sultan or ulama. For example, there is a Sultan Hasanuddin in Makassar. He is one of the hero of fighting the colonial power. And also there is a Prince Diponegoro in Yogyakarta. That's in the royalty, Islamic royalty. There's also an ulama like Imam Bonjol in Sumatra or Cik Ditiro in Aceh. So if you see, the driving force of fighting this monopoly by colonial power mostly led by Islamic leader. Some of them call it as part of jihad to maintain the peace and prosperity of Islam in their land against the power, against the cruelty of the Western power. But unfortunately, the thing is, they are still separated. When I say there is a Prince Diponegoro in Yogyakarta and Hasanuddin in Makassar, they don't know each other. They don't know each other. When there is Imam Bonjol in West Sumatra and Cik Ditiro in Aceh, they're still in the one island, but they hardly know each other. That's how Netherlands can conquer Indonesia. Netherlands see Indonesia as a whole, from Sumatra to Papua. But the fighter, they only work for their local area, which means they're divided. They're not united to work for this one huge power, which make them easy for Netherlands to make it more separated they make in fighting each other by spreading fitnah and others. And finally, in 1901, in the early 20th century, Netherlands finally can conquer all Indonesia from Sumatra to Papua. There is one concept that not just foreign people, but I also want in my Indonesian brother and sister to remember. In our history class in school, we usually say that Netherlands colonized Indonesia for 360 years. Personally, I don't agree. They say 360 years because they count it from the first time Netherlands can conquer one area in Indonesia, which is Jakarta. But at that time, only Jakarta they conquer. They don't conquer all of Java. They don't conquer anything in Sumatra. So there is still a lot of Indonesian area that is still free. Only until 1901, when all Indonesia is under Netherlands occupation. So if I want to say how long in the Netherlands conquer Indonesia, personally, I think only around 30 years, from 1901 to 1939, until Japan came. So this country is also colonized Indonesia, 3.5 years. At that time, when Netherlands already have its power full in Indonesia, there is actually an indigenous enlightenment. Although the leader of Indonesia, the one who governed Indonesia at the time is a Western power, but they still have give some chance to people, especially the one who have enough money, to go to Hajj. I still remember there is some old culture, even it still exists in my grandfather's time. When you reaching your adulthood, early 11 years old, 12 years old, they send you to Makkah. They send you to Makkah. They send you to learn directly to Imam of Masjid al-Haram. And they don't accompanied by their parents, no. You send them alone, those boys, send them alone, and then to study there until they become Hafiz. So maybe it's take around 10 years or more. And one interesting thing about that, usually they change their name in Makkah. Usually change their name in Makkah as maybe as the part of like, this is a new me. This is me who already have more knowledge of Islam. And this chance actually give opportunity for Indonesian people to strengthen their knowledge, strengthen their iman, and use it as a vehicle to get the independence. In around 19th to 20th century, there are two major Islamic organizations that still exist until today and become a major force of Islamic activity and Islamic life in Indonesia. One is Muhammadiyah, and two is Nahdlatul Ulama. Muhammadiyah is founded by Imam Ahmad Dahlan from Yogyakarta. The goal of Muhammadiyah at that time is to purify Islam, because at the moment, in the first time, in 14th to 16th century, we found that to make Islam more acceptable, they tried to mix it with the old Hindu and Buddha culture. However, when times come, there is the disadvantage of this method is creating a lot of bid'ah in the Islamic practice in 19th century. Muhammadiyah want to clean that, want to fix that thing. For Nahdlatul Ulama is founded by Imam Hashim Ash'ari, also from Java, but this one in East Java. The goal of Nahdlatul Ulama basically is to unite all of the different view of Islam in Indonesia, and unite all these imam and ulama, basically to connect, to make united Muslim in Indonesia, which make them one of the organization who first sent their troops to help in independence war. And then when we get our independence in 1945, there is a lot of debate. What kind of government we need to use? We have a majority of Muslim. Why not use Islamic law in Indonesia? Please pay attention that the one who fight for Indonesian independence is not only Muslim. Maybe majority Muslim, but not all. So when we made our first national ideology, the first sentence is the one divinity of God with the necessity of Muslim to do the Islamic law and Sharia. They want to write that as the national ideology. At that time, the non-Muslim felt disappointed. Are these countries only for Muslim? I know it's a lot of Muslim in here, but I also fight for my own country. And this is the example of tolerance by our Muslim founding fathers. They wish to change it. At that time, there is a possibility for the Muslim founding fathers to not change it. If we call it like in the committee of Indonesian independence, maybe 95% of them is Muslim. They can just, with that much of number, they can just ignore it. No, we want Muslim words exist in our ideology. But no, they know that unity is important for this very young country. So they change it. Until now, it's only called the one divinity of God. That's enough. That still accommodate Islam and other country and another religion. Islam actually have ups and downs in the history of free Indonesia. In the time of our first and second president, sometimes we have a good time, sometimes we have a bad time. In the time of our second president, they want to use they want to decrease the influence of Islam, actually. They want to use the national ideology stronger. But in the end, when the regime is end, when we're reaching the late 20th century to 21st century, there is the chance for Islam to rise again. This one has a good impact, but also has a bad impact. The good impact is that the activity of Muslim in Indonesia become much free. They become, they can express their religion much better. The bad side is it's become too free that a lot of few came to influence what kind of Islam is Indonesia. So if you came to Indonesia right now, you can find from the most extremist Islam to the most liberal Islam. You can find all of them in Indonesia, but it's actually look like a pyramid. The number of people is look like a pyramid. The smallest one is either extreme or liberal, but the biggest one is the moderate. Why the moderate Islam become majority in Indonesia? That's what I want to talk in the last part. Before I talk about why Islam survived in Indonesia, I want to come back to why Islam accepted in Indonesia. The first one, as I said before, is the peaceful approach. No war ever been fight to introduce Islam in Indonesia. This make the view of Islam is much softer and much approachable for the indigenous people at that time. The second one is the geo-economical relation. As I said, if you want to go from west to east, and at this time the major power in east is China, you could never go without going near Indonesia. You must go through the Malacca Passage. And at that time, if there is a lot of Middle Eastern work sail around that one, you also wish to have a good trades with them. And how you can get the good trades without knowing their language? From knowing their language, they under why is this Arabic always praying 5 times a day? Why these Gujarati people always reading some book? What is they doing 1 month not eating, not drinking? When they learn the language, they become interested to the culture. And that's how Islam become approachable to the people. The third one is actually the method of Wali Songo, cultural assimilation. This one is not only can be seen at the time of Indonesian came, but also until now. You can see from the design of mosques in Indonesia, not all of them has the round dome. Some of them are actually having a pyramidal dome. Some of them are not having dome at all. Because not all of them has a strong influence of the Middle Eastern part. Some of them want to keep their old culture, but still to make it become part of Islam. So maybe, do you think that to make mosque in Indonesia, you need to make dome? Not necessarily. You can make mosque in any kind of design. And the fourth one is how Islam is more comprehensive, more easy to understand compared to the previous religion. Back again, at that time, most Indonesian are Hindu or Buddha. Hindu and Buddha have a lot of gods, a lot of deities in the religion. And then came Islam, who introduced only one true God, the All-Almighty Allah. If you compare for gods who is almighty, why they need to be a lot? Why there need to be a lot of gods like in the Hindu or Buddha? If God is almighty, just one. One God can do anything. That's the true meaning of almighty. That is make more sense to the people. I remember having this conversation even until now to some brothers and sisters. Like, also some Japanese talk to me like, I understand why you can have a strong belief in Islam, because the concept of God and the concept of human in Islam is more understandable and more logical than other concept I've ever heard. And this is also happened in Indonesia. So if you see that in the 1, 2, 3, in the second and third reason, you see it's partly from Indonesia. Indonesia has a geo-economical position, and Indonesia has a lot of culture who can be used to adapt to Islam. But the first and the fourth reason is basically came from Islam itself. Islam never teach us to use force and cruelty to introduce the religion. And the concept, because the Islam is true, it's easier to accept it using your own logic. So it's not Indonesia, it's also Islam itself. It's actually easier to be accepted. And then we came, as I said before, Indonesia has 100 languages, around 1,000 tribes. My tribe with Brother Andika's tribe is different. even though we came from the same big tribe, they come from the same region, but basically we have different tribes. Also, I have a different type with Brother Satria, with Brother Zaki, with Brother Mikdad. Everyone in Indonesian you see in this mosque came from different tribes. This is how much tribe Indonesian have been. And maybe each of us has different language actually. We can be united by Indonesian language, but basically if we go back to our local home, we speak different one. So how come Indonesia, or how come Islam can be an umbrella for that diverse, a lot of diverse people? This is where the concept of Islam Indonesia came. This concept is largely campaigned by one of the most celebrated scholars of Islamic heritage and culture in Indonesia. His name is Professor Azumardi Azra. He just passed away last few months. He passed away when he wanted to go to Malaysia to give a speech, a seminar about this same thing. He has been dubbed as the spokesperson of the concept of Islam Indonesia. And due to his work, he was given from the United Kingdom, the CBE, the Commander of Most Excellent Order from United Kingdom. He's Indonesian. Indonesian don't really is not part of Commonwealth. Don't really have why in the United Kingdom really need to give them here. But the thing he teach, the thing he brought, the concept of Islam Indonesia is really interesting and really explain how Islam can be a bridge to each other, not only from within Indonesia itself, but from Indonesia to other country. The background of the concept to create concept of Islam Indonesia is the necessity to define Islam role for accommodating diversity, democracy, and modernism in Indonesia. And the keywords of this is moderation and toleration. This is the two main key of the concept of Islam in Indonesia. If we go back to the Quran, Allah already said in Surat Ar-Rum ayat 22 and Surah Al-Hujurat ayat 13. In Ar-Rum, I said the translation, among his signs is the creation of heavens and the earth and the diversity of your language and your color. Verily in that are signs for people of knowledge. So difference is created by Allah is not to different us. The difference, the diversity is to make us learn why these people has different language, how to have accepted a people who has different from us. This is what came to the concept of Islam in Indonesia. We don't use difference between us as a force to separate us. We use them to unite us. We use them to strengthen us. And I think this is also can be used not only in Indonesia, but other places. In our mosque, for example, our mosque probably one of the very few who been managed by not only one majority ethnic. We have a lot of diverse ethnic in our mosque. This is one of the quite important message I want to bring, and I think it's interesting to use it with the compare of how Islam going in Indonesia. Islam in how people practice Islamic culture in Sumatra and the Islamic culture in Java is different. But does that mean we cannot work with each other? Our first president is from Java and our first vice presidents from Sumatra. They can work together. They both Muslim. They have different culture, but they can work it anyway. Because of what? Because of the moderation and toleration. We can accept that people has different view. And in Al-Hujurat, ayat 13, we say, "O people, we have created you male and female and made you into nations and tribes that you may know one another. Verily, the most noble of you to Allah is the most righteous to you. So it's not the one who practiced this, the one who practiced that. The one who's the best in Allah, in front of Allah, is the one who is right. The one who is right, the one who's doing the right thing. So it doesn't matter if you pray like this in tashahud or in this in tashahud, because even the mazhab, we have 4 mazhab, we have different mazhab. But how we will see in the front of Allah is if we see through the right one, the righteous one. I'm not going to say that Indonesian is Shafi'i country. No. Majority of us practice Shafi'i mazhab. But that doesn't mean we always do in the Shafi'i mazhab sake. No, not really. We are not only obey one kind of practice in Islam. There's a lot. And that's okay. We accept it as part of our life. So basically, this is the message of Islam in Indonesia that I want to give to you. I'm sorry if it's too long or a bit boring. And I hope it's give us a chance to learn. Jazakallah khairan.